Hello, Raquel. It's nice having you here. Thank you for coming. I will start with the book you wrote recently. It's called Who Pays for the Welfare State in Portugal? So the first question is obvious. Who pays for the welfare state in Portugal?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm really happy to be here because we cannot go out of this crisis without a deep solidarity among the European workers against the way the bourgeoisie is coming out of the crisis in Europe. Also, we have something in common in our past, is that the fall of dictatorships are just, they fall very near, just 3 months after the 25th of April, end up here the dictatorship. And this is again something very nice we have in common. We have calculated in this study, I've coordinated, but there are 18 historians and economists there. We have used the model by Anwar Shaikh in the United States, so it's a model that you can use here in Greece. And with this model of calculation, we have calculated all the taxes and social security contributions that worker pays. This includes direct and indirect taxes. And we have calculated how much the state spends with the workers in the so-called welfare state. This is education, health, sports, transport, leisure, social security. And we have reached the conclusion that most of the years there is even a superavit, and that a huge amount of money is transferred from the welfare state to different mechanisms of private capital accumulation. But in any case, using the official figures, so not using a typical Marxist model, because in the Marxist sense we would say that all the workers produce the value, so this is not a question. But even using the liberal approach, saying that in fact the employers pay something and the employees pay another, even using these figures we've reached the conclusion that the welfare state it's totally paid by the workers. So we cannot say there is a debt or there is a legitimate and an illegitimate debt. This is in fact trying to hide the real question that is behind here, is that in order to go out of the crisis, the European governments are eating the part of the salary that is necessary to maintain and live. Let's say it like this.
Okay.
Eating in a sense that they are devouring, they are destroying, they are going to pick up the part of the salary, the necessary salary to live. Not just the salary that is after, and this is profit, they are going also to the necessary salary, health, education.
This brings me in a way to the next question, the importance of choosing to publish such a book in this time. I guess that the question of welfare state has many implications to issues like the public debt and if we should pay, whose debt is this? Mm-hmm. Issues like the obsession around the budget deficits and that we should how to deal with them, the functioning of the state in contemporary capitalism, mm-hmm. and so on. Any thoughts?
Well, I can say some thoughts about this in a very short time, but I think we are in a process of obviously decadence of capitalism, and the way the bourgeoisie is trying to go out of successive crises, of different crises after the Second World War, is by war economy. So you had the Korean War and then all the wars that go after that. So there is a huge war business that pushes the other sectors of the economy, and there is a huge use of public money that is transferred from public to private hands. So the welfare state that was conquered by the working class in the defeat of the Nazi fascism is now a way of accumulating capital and surviving to the, let's say, European big companies, etc. The debt is one of these mechanisms. So you have several mechanisms to transfer public money to private hands. One of that is the debt. The debt itself is a fixed rent. You don't put your money in the production because you don't have an average profit rate, but you put it in the debt because the debt gives you a fixed rent. This is also the so-called public-private partnerships that are all around Europe, the pension funds. All these mechanisms are mechanisms of capital accumulation that are not specific finance capital because they are deeply attached to salary. So we see here the reality of capitalism, that in the end, if he wants to make profit, he has to go
for the
salaries of the workers.
Okay. Let's move to Portugal and the situation there. I understand that a year and a half around after the last elections and the victory of the right wing, we see a shift in mass consciousness. Mobilizations. I saw an amazing video of protesters interrupting the Prime Minister singing anthems of the Carnation Revolution. There seems to be a major shift in consciousness.
Well, I would say there is ups and downs. I cannot really have a perfect notion because we are in the middle of the process, so I don't know how to analyze it. But in average, since 2011, we have ups and downs in the mobilizations processes. Now there is a specific moment of mobilization, either because the divisions inside the different ruling groups are bigger. So there is really, let's say, a sector of the bourgeoisie is really losing money with the austerity measures because the internal consumption is broken. In a way, on the other hand, we have increasing terrible conditions for the working class. We have around 24% of real unemployment rates. People don't know how to live. We have huge cut in the pension, so people cannot help their kids and their grandchildren. So this combination is now bringing a new process of mobilization towards a huge demonstration that will hopefully be huge, that will take place tomorrow. And there is also these two new movements which are very interesting for the people that are engaged in these movements, which is the kind of new ways of protest. The first one is to going after the members of the government, singing Grândola Vila Morena, which is the music of the 25th of April Revolution. And the second one is to ask for the invoices wherever you go in the name of the ministers. So the fiscal number of the ministers are on the internet around everywhere, and people, when they go to a coffee or whatever, they ask for the bill in their number. And this is somehow questioning the fiscal system. So this is another very innovative way of protesting. But until now, the protests were not enough to change the things. I would say that the opposite. The things are worse. It's still a very defensive situation. So probably the methods of protest must be much stronger, and they have to think about how to deal with paralyzing the production, not just for one day in a symbolic way of general strike, but really paralyzing the country, and otherwise they won't get their lives back.
The situation is almost the same in Greece. Many general strikes, but with many ups and downs in between. that's the same question, I think. About the social movement in Portugal, there is this feeling that many mobilizations are organized not by the unions, but by a wide range of social collectives, with the culture of indignados in a way. The first question is if this is the case, and the second is what's the relationship between social movements and the working class movement, the trade unions?
Well, it's a very difficult and complex question, but I would say this is the main question at this moment, because it brings us to the question of subjective factors analyzing the protesters. I would say that now, in general, this new working class, precarious and unemployed working class, is totally they don't see themselves represented in the left political parties, not even in the unions. And in a way, they don't see themselves represented in the democratic regime, in the parliamentary, in the elections. So there is a huge critique towards politics in a general sense. In a way, this is not a fascist critique, but it's a very progressive critique, in a sense that this democratic regime didn't bring us a good life. So why we should believe on it, why we should vote, why we should believe on these parties. And they see even the left parties, they are not blamed by the situation because these policies from the social democratic and conservatives, but they are blamed by his incapacity to resist to this situation. So they are very tame resisting this situation. They are unable to resist the situation. So they are blamed together because of this. Secondly, we have these huge social movements. I would say that these people are looking for a way to organize themselves, but in a very atomized way. So they really don't know. In a way, they are much better than their parents, let's say it like this, because they criticize the democratic regime. But in a way, it's much worse because they don't know how to organize themselves. They are very terrible on organization. So the so-called social movements, social platforms, but it's always also complex because in a lot of platforms there are the so-called fronts of the parties. They don't appear as the parties themselves, but they appear as social movements, but in a way they are connected with the parties. So this is a big mixture. I think we are in a transition process. Nobody knows what will come and what kind of alternatives will come. But it's true that this way of organization, in a way, the so-called indignados, which is a very weak organization, was not enough to go out of the crisis. This is obviously. The organized working class is very attached to the unions, and in a way, the two sectors are not together. You have the organized labor movement in a way, and you have the unorganized new labor movement, precarious and unemployed, and they, in exceptional cases, like the support of the social movements to the dock workers' strike in the last year, except these particular situations, we don't really have a unified movement.
One final question. As a labor historian, as an activist intellectual, an estimate of this transitional period. I think we can say in many ways and in many countries the situation where the ones from below don't want to be ruled like they used to be. Mm-hmm. Maybe the new thing, in Greece it's obvious, maybe it starts in Italy now, all the European South. We also see the ruling class unable to keep ruling like it used to. Mm-hmm. Do you see a political crisis coming? Are you optimistic about the situation?
Well, I do believe that this economic crisis has split the bourgeoisie. They are not unified ruling anymore. And you can see this by splits of the parties, crises in the parties, by fighting of different members of the bourgeoisie in the television. So there is a division in the ruling class, although not yet a dramatic division, I would say. In the working class, they don't want to be ruled, this is true, but they have not been able to build themselves an alternative to rule. So they know what they don't want, but they don't know what they want. And we are in this period. We really don't know, but what we can say, I would guess, that either do we accept to live very poor, all the working class, go back to a, let's say, European Chinese pattern, which is a subsistence salary and terrible working and labor conditions, or we are going to a process of a civil war, and we are going to this process without any proper organization to win. Let's say it like this. That's my opinion.
So the main task is the time to have such an organization?
Well, no doubt that if the left is unable to build a radical organization, the right will be ultimately able to do it. And I don't believe that we are going to fascism. Even fascism in Europe, they had to defeat the Hungarian Revolution, the German Revolution, the Spanish Revolution, the French 36. So fascism, it's a process of civil war against the proletariat, but it's a process that you really have to defeat historically, the working class. We are not in a process like this, no way, in my opinion. All these measures are made in a democratic regime. This is very important, although there are small extreme right parties. But we should learn from the past that if the left don't organize, what we should learn from the past is that the bourgeoisie is willing to do everything to save their property, including build concentration camps. I think this is the biggest lesson we have, and that the left can win, as they won in the Paris Commune, as they won in the Russian Revolution, and probably today we have much better tools, we are much more educated, we are much more aware of the mistakes of the past, namely what has happened in Soviet Union. We are much more aware of what happened in the Second World War, to build a new society based in necessities and not in profit, but also based in freedom and not in gulags.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.